Okay, so on behalf of the Interfaith Council of Franklin County, I want to welcome everybody to this second in our three-part series entitled Lifting the Veil, Racism in Franklin County. At the end of our program, near the end, we're going to be together from 7 to 8:30 if you're able to stay with us that whole time. Near the end, Kate Stevens is going to speak about our third program in this series, and also about at least one related event that you might be interested in. So for those who don't know me, I'm Marguerite Sheehan, and I'm the pastor at Trinity Church in Shelburne Falls. And I am a member of the leadership team of the Interfaith Council. And my wife, Dory, and I, Dory Miriam and I, we are parents of two adult children, daughters, grown daughters, very grown now, of color. And we're also very happily grandparents of three. And just to locate, Dory and I live here in Shelburne Falls in the parsonage right next door to the church. And the rest of our family live in Amherst, so not too far away. So I want to begin and also end with words from W.E.B. Oh, and how do we say it right? Du Bois. My French is not very good. The African-American writer, historian, civil rights activist, and one of the founders of the NAACP. So he was born here. I want to lift up his words because he was born here in Western Massachusetts. He was born in Great Barrington, just up the road from here, in 1868. 1868. So the words, really just a sentence that I'm going to share with you, they come from his book that's called The Souls of Black Folk. And these words that I'm going to offer to you, lift up, are part of the book where he's talking about what he experienced personally on the birth and then on the very early death of his first child. I think the child was less than 2 years old. And because tonight we're going to be hearing a lot about families, these words seem not only poignant, but needed. Racism and its effects on families have been with us for a long time, forever. And we are here in this moment. We are grateful to the ancestors who have preceded us and the children who are following us. So in his words, surely there shall yet dawn some mighty morning to lift the veil and set the prisoned free. Surely there shall yet dawn some mighty morning to lift the veil and set the prison free. So my prayer tonight is, may that dawn be upon us tonight.
That's Marguerite Sheehan.
So I want to thank everyone, all of you, for coming to be with us tonight. And we especially thank our four panelists who have agreed to speak from your own experience of what it's been like for the four of them, who are all members of interracial families, what it's been like to live here in Franklin County with their families. And soon I'm going to introduce each of them, but I want to extend a wide and deep thanks to the four of you: Lynn, Bonander, Molly Chambers, Sonny Walters, and Mary Mosley. As you have all come to be with us tonight, not just in your little Zoom boxes, but I know that you have come in your very full and tender and complex selves. And I want to tell you from the beginning that we are all grateful beyond measure for your presence, the fact that you are willing and to be with us. And we're also grateful to the rest of you, everybody else. We're up to 80 now who have come to, 81, who have come to participate tonight. At our last gathering, speaking of numbers, we were forced to close the program after 100 people logged on. And we were totally surprised that so many people attended last month. And we're really sorry now that our Zoom license couldn't let everyone in who wanted to participate in that program. So we learned from that lesson, and we're able to change the license. And tonight we hope that everyone, up to 500, will have a place at the Zoom table. So that's something we've learned. We're all in a learning time, a learning curve with this Zoom world, or most of us anyway. So that's one thing we learned. So we're glad that whoever is able to come tonight is able to be here. So tonight we have these panelists, 4 panels, who are going to share their personal stories about being part of multiracial families. And our job, particularly for those of us who are called white, is to open our hearts and our ears and listen. And that's what we considered our job, so to speak, last time, and I think it is still true tonight. So these panelists are going to each speak from about 8 to 10 minutes. That's the time that we've allotted. And near the end of that time, if the conversation is still going on or the speaking is still going on, Kate Stevens is going to hold up a little sign that'll say, 1 or 2, you have 2 minutes left, just to kind of alert you. And don't worry about it. It's all going to work out. And then after the final presenter gives her remarks, then there'll be a time for questions and brief comments. So for all of us who are here, if you have any questions that you want to be brought forward in hopes that we may be able to do that, you can do that in the chat. The chat is not public. It goes just to Kate and Mason, who is going to hold that job of keeping track of the questions. And then at the end of the 4 speakers, she'll go have a little minute to go through them, and we'll pull out some that are the same and some different, and try to get a cross section of questions.
I don't know if I can get back.
And we expect to end on time at 8:30, and we hope that before that time, those questions that have been sent in will mostly be answered, and we'll then open up so that people might offer, if anyone has something they want to ask verbally, vocally, we may have a time to do that. So that's the plan. And before the panelist begins, I want to share a land acknowledgement, which is a way to recognize those who have lived on these lands and even do now, but have lived before the time of colonization and slavery. And I want to particularly thank Leslie Frazier. I don't know if she's here tonight, but she's from our Interfaith Council. And she offered this acknowledgement for us to use today, and it's just slightly altered. We give thanks for the indigenous people who have stewarded the land and waters of the Connecticut River Valley for more than 15,000 years. We acknowledge that we now inhabit land that was seized, expropriated, and stolen from indigenous people, the homelands of the Nipmuc, the Abenaki, and the Pecumtuck, whose people and descendants still live here among us. We give thanks and we pledge to build community and restore justice with the indigenous people of this land. So I'm going to now introduce one by one each of our folks and have them have their time. And I'm introducing with some of the words. We asked each one to tell us a little something that we could share with just a few words by way of introduction. So our first speaker tonight is Lynn Bonander. And Lynn has lived mostly in Franklin County since 1982, except for 3 years way down there in Springfield. And she had a brief stint in Ashfield, and most of her time has been here, for me anyways, in Shelburne Falls. And she is of Swedish and Polish descent. Her first husband was African American, and she raised her 2 biracial daughters in Franklin County, and thereafter the couple divorced. Both daughters are now in their 40s and are raising their own children in Shelburne Falls. And we heard from one daughter the last time we were together. Lynn's work focuses on the intersection of race and class, justice, and reversing climate change. She's the manager of the Co-op Power, our local energy cooperative, and of the People's Solar Energy Fund, a nonprofit supporting biracial and people of BIPOC, BIPOC, and low-income communities across the country to own their own renewable energy and good green jobs. So please welcome Lynn.
Thank you very much, Marguerite. And I just want to start by turning on my microphone. How's that? Thank you, Marguerite, very much for making this space, and to Kate and to others on the Interfaith Council. You know, there's a part of the way our economy is structured that we all have to be kind of divided in order for things to work. Because if we all came together and said, we really want an economy, a government that works for the public good, some of the powers that be wouldn't be so happy about that. So, you know, race is one of the ways that we're divided. It's just a construct that doesn't have any basis in reality. It's, you know, you can have a whole basis of reality based on somebody's eye color, you know, and all these people can do this and all that. It's just a way of allocating privilege. And if we lived in a world that wasn't so worried about who got privilege and who didn't get privilege, things would be different. But here we are. And so we often don't talk about the things that are hard. It's easier that way. And race in Franklin County is something that it's easier not to talk about. And so I'm so delighted you all decided to talk about it, because I think it's important. We want to be the drivers of our destiny, you know, and the only way to really come together is to get a chance to chat about really important things. So thank you so much. The other thing I just want to notice is that I'm grateful to be in this circle, because as I look around at the pictures of all the people that are here, many of you were the village that my children were raised in. Many of you supported them at various points in their lives, and I'm very grateful for the love and generosity and the openness and inclusion, and, you know, taking us all in when we showed up when they were very little. And so this Franklin County is, as we heard last time, it's a generous place, it's a loving place, it's an open place. People come and visit my home here we ran an Airbnb for 5 years and had people from all around the world come and walk into town here in Shelburne Falls and have wonderful experiences. People just felt welcomed and included. So there's so much that's really great about this community. There's also some things that were hard. God, I wasn't gonna cry, but you know, raising children makes you so vulnerable, because your children walk out the door and then they get to deal with the world. And sometimes people are really cruel, and you know, white kids as well as kids of color have to deal with unkindness from other kids and other kindness from other adults. It just, you know, my kids are in their 40s now, so we're talking a long time ago. So why am I crying? Because this is a long time ago. I should get over it. But you know, the reason I'm crying is because it didn't end with my children, right? There are other kids that are experiencing a lot of prejudice and unkindness just because of the color of their skin, and it's or because of their class background. Or schools can be really, really unkind places for kids that have any kind of difference. And so I just want to tell you a couple of those stories, even though it's a little hard to tell them. But when Maya mentioned one of these stories, and I'm going to check my time. How much? I probably used all my time already, right? So when Maya was in Ashfield, she went to school in second grade, and she stopped smiling. September, October, she stopped playing. November, I was taking to her therapist and she was losing hair. I was going into the school every day saying, do you know it? What do you notice? What's happening? My child is really struggling here. The first day of Christmas vacation, now this is September, October, November, December, the first day of Christmas vacation, she walked into our house and had the first smile on her face. And she said, I don't have to go back to school for 10 days. I said, okay, give it up. I want to know, what is it about school that's so hard? And she said, the kids won't let me touch anything because I'll make it dirty. Now, this was a major mental health issue for a second grader. So I called up the teacher and said, let's do some trainings, some teaching, let's do some awareness, let's get the parents in, like let's take some action here, because this is a big problem, and I'm not sure why we couldn't figure that out earlier, but let's do something now. And the teacher said, it's just the kids' way of having fun. It's not a problem. So I called the principal and said to the principal, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but this is a problem. Let's do something. And the principal said the same thing. And I was devastated. I'm trained to be a public school teacher. I was teaching in Amherst, and it was just so mind-boggling to me. And so I I took my kids out of public school and put them in at the center school. And the center school has a curriculum and a way of teaching that attends to the social relationships between kids and doesn't let things go wrong. They care about how the kids are treating each other. And the problem was over. Maya, who's just so wonderful, who's here, she had the support she needed to not only have good relationships with the kids in her class, but to recover from the really horrific whole semester, and for a kid that age, it's like their whole life. So I don't think anybody can listen to that story without understanding how devastating that was to her. And there are people in our community that really don't understand how horrific it is for people to be, to experience that kind of thing. I've been at convenience stores when my kids were little where they wouldn't let me buy bread and milk. They took all the people behind me and wouldn't let me pay for bread and milk. I've had neighbors not be willing to open a door to me. I had when we were in Springfield, Margie was in a classroom, but she was failing in 5th grade, failing everything. And I went in and said, what's going on? She's got papers here that are way easier than anything she ever did in school in Ashfield. And they said, well, she's coming from a rural school. They're not very advanced. And, she just doesn't know very much. And she's not very smart. I said, well, no, something's wrong. Can you show me the test that placed her in the lowest group here in the classroom, of the 5 groups in the grade, how she got to the lowest one? And they said, oh, we can't show you that. And then I went in and looked at the classroom, and there were only 10 white kids in the class, and they were all at the talented and gifted table. And then there was another group that was a little bit the lightest skin. They were the next smartest, and and on down. And Margie was a little bit darker, so she was in the bottom group. Thank you, I say, Kate. So I went to the teachers. I tried to. So after 3 months, she thought she was stupid, and that she would always get Fs. It only took a couple of months before they convinced her that she was worthless. And so I went to the teacher, didn't get anywhere. I went to the school department and said that, I showed a picture of the classroom. I said, You can't tell me that race is determined, that ability is determined by skin color. This is completely outrageous. But if I hadn't been an advocate, my daughter would have been lost. And this is a young person that went on to graduate from Columbia, get a master's degree from University of Chicago in finance. I mean, she's brilliant, right? But the school system in Springfield was tracking her to a total dead end because of the color of her skin. So anyway, those stories, just it's as a parent of people of color, so parents of color watching their kids go through this have can't use white privilege to address the problem, and it's even worse. So anyway, those are my stories of being totally grateful for all that you all did to help me raise my children, and also just being still devastated by what they had to go through just because of the color of their skin. And I just have a couple of takeaways. One, please don't make assumptions. If you see someone, don't assume you know anything about them. Don't assume. Expect skin color is predictable of someone's being as their hair color or eye color. And don't remember that someone is a person of color when you're talking with them, when you're being with them, and never forget that they are. And their challenges are harder than yours if you're white. And let love be your guide as you move through those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for your personal, very, very personal reflections about your family, your children, the hard things in the middle of all the beauty and the gratitudes. And somehow your ability to say, and here's some takeaways, also to kind of step back and have a broad view too, just is just really, I'm so grateful. We're so grateful. Thank you. I want to have about 10 minutes of silence in between each person, but I guess we don't quite have the time for that, but maybe at least a breath of. Our second panelist tonight is Molly Chambers. And Molly uses she and her as personal pronouns. And Molly has lived in Greenfield since 1974, when she moved here from Vermont with her family. And like Lynn, her 4 children are now in their 40s. Molly is of European descent, and she's a licensed social worker and works part-time for LifePath and part-time for the Dharma Seed Prison Project. She does social and racial justice work with All Souls Unitarian Church and other racial groups. And I have known Molly and her work with All Souls for many years. She was a good help for me when I was a member years ago of the Unitarian Church in Northampton and working on racial justice. So I'm glad to be with Molly and the rest of you and everyone else here on our Zoom screen. So let's please welcome Molly Chambers.
Molly, you're on mute.
I was going to just say that you're probably on mute.
Okay. Hi, Marguerite. I'm really glad to see you, and I remember all the racial justice work we did together, and they're great memories, and the great group of people from Amherst, Petersham, Northampton, and Greenfield that all worked together in this area a number of years back that led on to many other racial justice work activities that we later did. And I'm glad to see Lynn and remember her and her family coming up. So it's wonderful to be among friends and people I've known over the years. You asked what it's like being part of a multiracial family. We were proud of our multiracial heritage. We made a point of talking about and reading from books about the many countries where our ancestors lived. My husband and I had a history together in the Black community in the civil rights movement in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is where his family was. And so that Chester has a very special place for our family growing up, and they were also a very special support. He taught Black studies, Afro-American history, and sociology at the college level at Marlborough, GCC, UMass, and other places. Thus, we had access to a lot of resources about other cultures and countries. Even when my kids were babies, we used to get hostile stares until eventually we would stare back at the noses of the staring people until they stopped staring at us. I remember this in the supermarket a number of times. My older daughter remembers getting stared at a lot. I would get a lot of questions about if my kids were adopted. Everyone thought they were adopted. I would answer that they were my biological kids. It seemed that we were always having to do battle for our family against the racism we face in many forms, from racial bullying, my children's schools and sporting events, to racism in the broader Franklin County community. What were some of the challenges we face? Our kids faced the racial bullying all through the Greenfield school system. When they told us, we went to the schools to try to get the problem addressed. And, we both, came from teaching backgrounds, so we weren't strangers to a school environment. But the teachers and principals did little. Eventually, our kids didn't always tell us what happened. I remember my older daughter telling us that going to school in Greenfield was like a million tiny pinpricks all the time. Kids and teachers told her she was pretty for a Black. She was smart for a Black. She also heard racial slurs about her father, and then people would say it didn't apply to her. Her experience improved greatly when she attended Syracuse University, where she graduated cum laude and then went on to Columbia to get a master's degree, as did my younger daughter. My younger daughter, who was more light-skinned, had the experience of hearing racist things when people thought she was white and didn't realize that she was biracial, and that put her in a very difficult place. I will never forget about her class in the Greenfield Middle School. Their teacher had them play a game of the colonial powers versus the African nations. As her father had taught African history, she knew a good deal about the horrible things the colonial powers had done to the African nations, and that was no game. She protested to the school and got nowhere. She told us, and her father and I, we went to the school and talked to the principal and the guidance counselor. Their response was to give her a library period, and the rest of the kids in the class went on playing the game. She was rather upset about that, to say the least. All of my kids were usually the only students of color in their class, or there was maybe one other student of color in their class. After the game of the colonial powers, my daughter asked us to find a good school where there was diversity and no racial bullying. She mentioned her brother's experience of racial bullying in Franklin County sports when he was called the N-word more times than we could all count. Eventually, she ended up going to Wilbraham and Munson Academy on scholarship, where there was diversity and where there was not racial bullying. Her brother had gotten a scholarship for his senior year to attend a boarding school in Pennsylvania, but there also was no diversity and no racial bullying. And I was interested to see that Lynn's kids ended up going to the center school, that the toxic public schools in our area. My son loved sports and played ice hockey, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, track, and as many sports as they would let him play any given time. And he recalls the racial taunts from the class, the crowds, and other players. One year, the parents had a family night for the team members and their families, and all the families came. They showed videos of the teams playing in which all the players were shown, all but my son. There was no explanation. He had given a lot to the team. He was a great player. That was hurtful. After Black History Month, my kids would always ask why Black history was taught for 1 month and white history was taught for 11 months of the year. I wonder, as I heard Lynn speak, where she received her support for her family. I know we were lucky that we did have support from a number of areas. Our family had support from both of our families of origin and friendships we made in Greenfield and the 5 college community with other multiracial and multicultural families. We joined a support group for families of adopted children from other countries. Also, Black students from the 5 college community ran a Saturday program for kids of color at Smith College. They taught the kids African American history and did related craft activities. My kids loved going to those Saturday programs with a welcoming community. You asked how these experiences impacted our kids and our family. Oh, just a minute. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. I and our friends from multiracial and multicultural families have tried to bring about changes in response to the racism we've experienced. 17 years ago, we founded a multiracial film festival to address the community racism by showing films involving racism and then having facilitated discussions about the racism. These films address racism against African Americans, Latinas, and Native Americans, and Japanese Americans. We've had some amazing discussions after these films, and I've received some very good community support for them. I have continued over the years to be an activist for racial justice in our area. Even recently, as an invisible member of a multiracial family, I find myself addressing racism, such as when I went to buy a Father's Day card for my son. The following poem describes my experiences several years ago. Is that okay? I assume it's okay to read a poem.
Yeah, two more minutes, Molly.
Okay. Why can't I find a Father's Day for my son? Why? Pictures of white men and their sons on the beach, white men and their sons fishing, white men and their sons boating. I am sick and tired. I'm tired of a world that doesn't show my family. I tell the clerk, sorry, I mixed up with pages. I want a Father's Day card for my son. I explain. She looks at me. No words, no excuse. I want cards with Black men, brown men, yellow men, white privilege, blindness. You cannot see the world around you. Why?
Thank you, Molly. Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to hear folks, the extent of time, the many years, the many memories, and still the many hurts, and still the strong faith and hope and working. As you say, I'm continuing to work for racial justice. I'm really glad. I'm glad that you're here with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. And our next panelist is Sonny Walters. Sonny lives in Shelburne Falls and is mixed Native American and Caucasian. She is a very proud parent of a young daughter who is African American, Black, Native American, and Caucasian. Sonny prefers the nouns associated with she. She's a self-employed bookkeeper in the local Hilltown areas, as well as the facilitator and the founder of the Shelburne Falls Area Community awareness group. And I believe that I first met Sonny in relationship to that group, who has for many weeks, months, have stood out in our small town to speak about Black Lives Matter. And Sonny was, as we say, she was the organizer of that group. So I'm really glad to have her with us tonight. So please welcome Sonny Walters.
Okay. Hi. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm going to try really hard not to get emotional, which is going to be impossible. I live in Shelburne Falls. I've been here for about 4.5 years. I'm from the tri-state area. I moved up here on purpose. When I came to visit and get some help for childcare, I fell in love with the place. I heard about the amazing school system education that there was up here in this area, and the community and was so vibrant and welcoming, and the scenery, the beauty and surrounding areas of everything that we get to enjoy here that we don't get to enjoy. We have like a hill in Delaware. It's called Iron Hill. It's a hill, you know, that's what we have. So this is great. And so I fell in love with it. For those reasons, we moved up here. We were very fortunate to get Layla into Row. Originally, she was in Valley Play School here in Shelburne Falls. And we've really been welcomed by the town. I do want to say that it's been an amazing place to be. One of the reasons why I wanted to be here was because it felt safe in the regards of crime and, you know, having to maybe like lock your doors at night or your car or things like that. I don't lock my car. And if somebody takes something, they probably need it. So, you know, there's a safety about this area and a welcoming to the community. I got to know the town very quickly by working at Mocha Maya's as a barista and a baker. And my daughter was there before and after school, and she became a little movie star in Mocha Maya's. If you were in Shelburne Falls in the last 3.5 to 4.5 years ago, you saw my daughter and I singing and walking and marching and riding around town, and she's saying hello to everyone and dancing in Mocha Maya's on the stage thing. And it was wonderful. And just to I could go on for hours with the experiences that I've had. I've kind of put myself in the forefront of it now. And in regards to what other people were kind of mentioning with their experiences, is my daughter is 8 years old. So we're kind of going through this now. And that's really the sad part about this also, is that listening to these stories of people whose children are 40 years old, and my daughter, who's 8, about to turn 8 in April, isn't experiencing everything that difficultly, but the fact that she is still experiencing things of that nature, and what we have experienced since we started to do, you know, different things around this town. To kind of get to her experiences, the first thing that she experienced is she came home in kindergarten. It was kindergarten. She was in Row for pre-K and for kindergarten, and she came home very, very upset one day, insisting that she was adopted. And the only reason that, you know, she had to be adopted, she was being told by the children at school, was because I was a different color than her, and that it was of the way that they had been brought up, and the experiences that they had, was that if the children were a different color than the parent, then they must be adopted. And so she was, you know, very upset about it. We addressed it. We talked about it. It didn't become a huge thing. I did talk to the school about it, and everything is handled very well at her school. There's a lot of things that I would love to address that I can't address because I feel like it would, it would just be, not a good situation if I did. And that's because of the way that things are. I have to keep some of the information and stories private because it wouldn't do us any good, unfortunately. So with that being said, she had that experience in kindergarten. And then when the Black Lives Matter, so that I don't take up too much time, when the Black Lives Matter movement became very large in the nation, and Layla and I were watching it and, talking about it at home, she, during the conversation, wants to go out and be a part of it. She is Black and she is proud, and I love that about her. And I encourage that 100%. I encourage anyone to be who they are, and that is who she is. And on our way there, she made this video about, she says, Black Lives Matter, and that means me. And she's spinning in circles, and it's this beautiful video. And that's the first night that we went out. It was June of last year. We went out and we started holding up signs to be a part of that, and to be a presence of, we had 2 signs. We made a Black Lives Matter sign, and a peace and love for all sign was our message. And so with our peace and love for all sign and our Black Lives Matter sign, we stood out. And I was there, we had people wave, we had good responses, but at the same time, I was so disgusted by the reactions that I got to people looking at my daughter holding that sign and looking at a beautiful 8-year-old saying that her life matters because it's Black, because there are reasons why we need to address this. And she even gets that as an 8-year-old, that everyone should be treated equally. And if there's an issue, it needs to be stood up for. And I encourage her to do that. And so, we go out and we have some reactions that are extremely negative, that luckily Layla did not take full into effect. We've had experience. So from that night, it affected me in a way where I felt that if people are going to look at us standing out there and talk about it and go home and have a conversation with someone or anyone, my hope is that along the lines, there are people that are trying to stand up for injustice now. And there are people speaking out on every behalf. Everybody wants to speak out now. And if they speak out and other people speak out and they can come to terms with this systematic racism that we have in this world and what's happening with society and what needs to be corrected and how people should be respectful to everyone and everyone should be treated equally. So I saw that people were talking. I saw that it made a stir, and I felt that a stir is something. And so I decided from that night that I'm going to continue to make a stir, and I'm going to continue to put this in their faces, and it has to be seen and it has to be talked about, and it needs to be addressed. So as we stood out there, I could tell you for hours about all of the negative, horrible instances, from an older man leaning across his wife in his truck to give me the middle finger with me holding my Black Lives Matter sign, and my 8-year-old, 7 time, leaning on my shoulder with her peace and love for all sign. And he leans across his window, to give us the middle finger. We had a motorcycle drive through a crowd of children while we were standing out there. We've had people in an uproar that There is no racism in this town, and why should we be out there, and why would we make a stir, and why bring up all of this stuff? And that's because it is here. And standing out there with those signs makes it obvious that it is here. My daughter still having stories to experience makes it obvious that it is still here. It is a problem that exists. It needs to be addressed. Everyone needs to speak up, to not be afraid, and to stand up to these injustices. And when there is a conversation, I had someone harass me in a supermarket here about standing up for all of this, where there were at least a dozen people in that store where this man stood there and screamed at me at the top of my lungs, and no one in that store said anything. Not a single person. One person that worked there came up to me afterwards and said, "Sorry, I was going to say something, but it looked like you had it under control." No, I didn't have it under control. I don't have it. No one has it under control. And it might seem like you have it under control, but these are not situations that people should have to be in. I only have, I know, a minute left. And so I definitely can't cover everything. I tried to start this awareness group to bring more to the community for the children that are here. My daughter feels like she's alone a lot of the time because there isn't a lot of diversity here. And it's very, very hard at times when you have to deal with people who actually don't want change. Also, there's a lot of people that don't want change. So we have to figure out a way to get there as well. And all of these groups, there's so many groups out there, it's amazing, that are doing all these things. How can we get together and work together to continue to, make a difference, and more young people involved, as many as possible? I want to leave some words. I guess the only thing I can do from my position here is, again, encourage people to stand up and teach your children about diversity in different families, and that there's difference out there everywhere, and difference is a good thing. It's a great thing. So we need to also, my message would be, please, to just, stand up to this indifference and make whatever action you can and take whatever time you can. None of us have time. You have to make time. And that's the only way that things actually happen. So I'd like to encourage you to, these words are a song from an artist named Andra Day, I believe is her name. And she says, "And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. I'll rise up high like the waves. I'll rise up in the spite of the ache. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains and bring it to its feet and move mountains. Rise up. Do not be afraid." And it continues on, but that is the point of the message. So thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. I'm glad that you're here tonight. I know it was hard for all of us, and I'm hearing you too, hearing like this has been going on obviously for years, and a long time. People's children 40 years ago, and now, and the same things, some of the very same things are happening for your child now. And I think it's good that we're here with each other, and that we're able to continue to hear each other's stories, and your story, and the women who've come before you, to talk about how we have to continue to rise up. So appreciate your being here. Thank you. And our final panelist now is Mary Mosley. And Mary is a multimedia artist who believes in the value of creativity in all realms of daily living. She's a retired nurse, a mother of 2 sons. Mary loves the natural world, elders, children, horses, dogs, and all the wonder that a day and a night might bring. So please welcome Mary.
You need to unmute, Mary.
Got it? You have it now? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Mosley. I'm an older white woman. I come from an upper middle class, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant background. I have had an intimate relationship with a person of color, with an African American, since I was 17 years old. I am now 69. In 1971, I married an African American man, Guy Mosley. We had a son together, Jason Mosley, who is now 49. When the marriage ended, I became a white single parent of a brown-skinned child. In 1983, I married a white man, Doug Johnson. We also had a son together, Taylor Johnson, who is now 38. I am now partnered with Roberta Wilmore, an African-American woman, who also has a son, Amber Wilmore Hurley. Roberta and I have known each other for about 45 years and have been partners for almost 30 of those 45 years. I moved to Ashfield permanently in 2009 after coming back and forth from where I lived on the north coast of Massachusetts in a city called Newburyport. I am sharing with you some of the details of my story because one of the realities for me, as having spent my entire adult life with an African American, has had and continues to have a profound influence on the relationships with my family, with my friends, my neighbors, community, and the wider world. And because of the construct of the wider world, I feel it necessary to provide those details and reveal the specifics of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual preference. I'm not sure that I thought of myself as a white girl until I was with a Black man. Within these relationships with African Americans, there is a shared experience of witnessing the daily navigation around what a reaction or what a response might be in any given situation. It can be warm and welcoming. It can be judgmental, critical, or downright hateful. Whichever it may be, there is always a reaction. A mixed couple of any gender combination will be noticed. When I began living in Ashfield with Roberta and making it my permanent home, it seemed important to me to be recognized as an individual and not as Roberta's partner, which was how I was mostly known. Over the last 12 years, I have spent time in various groups, getting to know people in the workplace, and making friends separately from my relationship with my partner. So I, as a white woman, have been able to blend into a mostly white community and not necessarily having to share my family history or reveal my family structure. I am fully aware of the privilege of this capability. My partner, Roberta, does not have this privilege, nor does her son, Amber, nor does my son, Jason. I may not spontaneously offer, but I always am willing to respond to any questions which may be asked. I also learn so much about another's opinion or viewpoint by just staying quiet. My experience living in Franklin County, I would say, has been mostly positive. I am fortunate to be surrounded by a wonderful, caring, interesting friends and neighbors. I feel well supported as an individual. I feel well supported as a couple. There have been specific incidents that are blatantly racist, some of which Roberta shared in the last panel discussion. But I'll share some of the everyday occurrences which affects us. We often need help on the farm. We need plow people in the winter. We need lawn mowers and field mowers in the summer. And we need the occasional repair person for an older farmhouse. Our concerns are what the reaction might be from the individuals who may be providing these services. Are they comfortable working with two women? Are they tolerant of working with a mixed couple? Are they able to take direction from a Black woman? And then there are what I would consider the microaggressions. Many people assume that I am the property owner. I am not the property owner. Roberta is the property owner. People often direct their questions to me, assuming that I am the one in authority. Or it may be that they are just more comfortable addressing the white person. On the flip side, there have been incidences where a person of color has come to the farm from outside of the Hilltown area, and there is this palpable sense of relief that you feel when they realize that they're going to be able to deal with a Black person, another person of color. And even I noticed in the last panel discussion, there was a question addressed to the panel who were all people of color about affordable housing. And in my mind, this question sort of reveals the belief that people of color would know about subsidized housing, which is an indication to me that that people assume that people of color are in some sort of economic distress. Let's see. All of these incidents and similar ones that occur, they occur on a daily basis. They are predictable and unfortunately expected. It takes constant vigilance to meet the challenges that arise. I'm in awe of the work that people are doing in Franklin County. There are many groups and people who are trying to address the racial justice issue. There are people that are trying to learn, trying to understand, trying to develop an awareness of other people who are different from themselves and different from the communities that they might be familiar with. There also remains the hardcore, narrow-minded, deeply seated hatred of difference, which of course perpetuates the fear and undermines the safety and well-being of all. I continue to learn every day. I continue to make mistakes. I continue to look at my own reactive tendencies, judgments, and assumptions. I continue as a mother to fear for the well-being of my brown-skinned sons. At times, I am weary of the effort it takes. I feel blessed. I am aware. I love my family. I love my family of origin. I love my sons, Jason, Taylor, and Amber. I love my friends and appreciate all they offer. And I love my partner, Roberta, and I'm so grateful to be on this long, amazing journey with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Thank you for sharing those specifics. As you say, the importance of naming names and naming differences and similarities, talking about the blessings and the sorrows and the love and the commitment and the fatigue and the commitment and the love. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, all of you, all four of you, and also everyone who's with us. And we are very grateful. We're grateful for your willingness to be with us tonight and to share each one so personally and from the heart, always straight from the heart. Kate Mason now from our group, as she's going to take a moment or two, I'm sure she's been doing this already, but to review any questions that have come in on the chat. And so I'm going to turn the mic, so to speak, over to Kate, and she can let us know if questions have come in and who they might be directed to. It's a little bit after 8:05, it's 8:06. So I think we have about 10 minutes or so for questions and answers, and then a little more open time and closing. So.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the panelists from my heart, but there are quite a few thank yous and appreciations for being so open. The first question is, could we hear Lynn's takeaways again? Lynn, did you get that?
Just working on getting my mic on again. So the first one was, don't make assumptions. And the corollary is, expect skin colors as predictable of someone's being as their hair color or eye color.
Could you say that again?
Expect that skin color is as predictable of who someone is as the color of their hair or the color of their eyes. Don't remember that someone is a person of color when you're relating to them, and never forget that they are. And let love guide you as you build relationships and address these issues.
Yeah. Thank you. We have a question also. How old were you? How old were your kids when they realized that their parent or parents didn't look like them? And the other people in town too, when they realized that they weren't the same color as the other people in town, and what was their reaction or response? That's to anybody.
My children didn't go to school in this area, but in my experience, I think they knew right away, as soon as they could articulate anything, their difference. That's how I feel about it, that they knew right from the very beginning that they were different.
Mhm.
I think my kids figured it out in preschool, once they started going to school. And I know that it was a big deal for them, because when we went to multiracial family gatherings, they were so excited because no one was telling them they were different. They were the same. And it was such a joy to be in a group where everyone felt like they were included. They were the same as everyone else.
Layla realized, I think, when the kids at school said that she was adopted. I think that's when she realized. And then after that, she realized that she was one of a few of a minority in this town. And we addressed it. And the thing that I learned from that experience, I don't know if I said it earlier, is that I prepared her deeply for what other families are, but I think other people get stuck in the fact that maybe what they think is normal, so they don't teach their children about what's different. And then I actually started to point out biracial or ethnic, people of any type to Layla, because I could tell she was starting to feel singled out and alone. And I wanted her to see that there were people like her everywhere. And that's hard, to do that, to try and conquer that the best way, and to deal with that. It's still an ongoing kind of thing.
Thank you. And the talk. Do any of you remember having the talk with your African American children?
In regards to their skin color, or what exactly? What is the talk?
I think it has to do with a certain behavior that
That talk. I know.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm not to get shot by the police.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't. I mean, I know that I'm gonna have to. I've already had discussions with her. Obviously, we're standing out there with Black Lives Matter signs. She knows all kinds of stuff. She's seeing the 8-year-old level of it. I'm not letting her get more exposure than she should see, but she does see what is happening in the world. When I explain different things, I have to explain it with truth, and she sees that. So it's an 8-year-old talk right now. It's going to move on to a teenage-year-old talk. She already actually has had a talk about the police, because of situations that we've been in personally. So it will be an ongoing thing as her age grows up.
I'm wondering about the parents of older kids, whether that was something that was done 40 years ago.
I can remember my son having the talk with his father. And I think having the talk and being aware of difference in racism is also with us very much linked to really giving our kids an appreciation for the heritage they can't come from. I mean, my husband's mother, she was part of the civil rights movement in Chester, Pennsylvania, protesting the conditions in the schools before there were even identifiable civil rights movements. And other people in the family were part of the civil rights movement. And my kids grew up, you know, we were very careful to make sure that they weren't having all white children's literature. And with their father teaching Black history, you know, they grew up with an awareness of having a positive connection and knowledge of their heritage that they were proud of. And I feel like it's an ongoing thing. I mean, my granddaughter who lives in Washington, D.C. has been racially bullied in Washington, D.C. and supposedly the most progressive elementary school in the district. And we've talked to her about that. And her father, you know, and mom have gone to bat for her there. So it's kind of like, it's a struggle over generations too. It goes on.
Good.
You know, my experience is the conversation is ongoing, and depending on how old they are, it just gets more sophisticated, as Sonny was saying. And I've got a book by Julius Lester on talking with kids about race, which I've read to my grandchildren who are 3 and 6 years old, and they're multiracial, and you know, just it's a beautiful book.
What was the book?
It's by Julius Lester, and it's for kids talking about race. And it makes the point so beautifully about how when you're, you know, race is part of who you are, but you're a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. We're all stories, you know, and race is just one of the stories that is about us. But my dad marched with Martin Luther King as a minister outside of Chicago. And, you know, we're part of a really dynamic Black family in Memphis, Tennessee, who, you know, adores us and throws out the red carpet, you know, when we go down. And so they've, you know, race is just an ongoing conversation. It happens every single day. You know, there's incidents that happen that you have to unpack, and it's just about being willing to have that conversation and meet kids where they are and support them through what's going on and help them understand the bigger context.
Thank you. Dan mentioned that actually what is being asked maybe is about telling older children how to behave around the police. And oh my goodness, this is a long, somebody else is contributing too. It's the talk is a specific ritual about this specific situation. Go ahead.
I just wanted to share you know, my older son, Jason, is 49. He's my biracial son. He sent me a text just a few days ago talking about going skiing in Maine since they lifted the restrictions about crossing the border out of Massachusetts. And he said, these aren't exact words, but basically his fear was, I hope I don't get lynched with all the Trump supporters up there, and that I can get through the day without an incident. And, you know, that always just breaks my heart. It causes me great anxiety. And, but for him, the reality is that anxiety is always there, ever present. and it's interesting because I had a discussion with my partner about it, and she said, well, if he had a Black grandmother, the Black grandmother would tell him not to go. So in terms of me actually giving that talk when he was younger, I'm not sure that I did that. I'm not sure from my background and my experience that I was really able to do that in a constructive way. I know he got picked up when he was about 17 years old in Newburyport, after living there all his life practically, because someone had robbed the local variety store, and they did a composite drawing and put it on the front page of the paper, and it happened to be a brown-skinned person, and the police just picked him up on when he was walking home from work to question him, which just was infuriating. And I remember going down to the police station and arguing with the supervisor about it. And he said, there's nothing. He said, is he 18? I said, yes, he is. And he said, well, then you have nothing to say about it. Mm. So this is in my experience, I guess, to be honest, what I would say was I regret that I didn't do more about letting him know about some of the dangers. I mean, he always was aware of his difference because most of his cousins and family members were white. And I stayed in my familiar community. And so, yeah, I mean, I wish I had done more. I wish I had been capable of doing more to help them through that.
There's a comment here from Jeffrey and Loretto. So much of Sonny's fighting spirit and stories resonated with me. I have also thought a lot about what my role is here, and after experiencing so much alienation, the only mission left for me to be is to teach others that it's okay for me to be here. I am needing to become a great teacher of justice and equality. I often get frustrated by the repetition of the sufferings in systems and people's mindsets. I am really wanting to be part of a larger discussion like this, where biracial people and people of color can help beyond just the talk, or beyond standing out there like sitting ducks. Though this too is important. How can we bring our knowledge and struggle to a state of true blossoming? We need peace. We need healing. I'm sick and tired too. How to effectuate more positive change?
Is that for comments?
Yes, sure.
My one solid answer for that would be our children. Our children are the next generation. They're going to lead us. For example, with everything that's happened, Layla wanted to be the president because she is a leader. She wants to be a congresswoman now after all this because she wants to be able to change laws and make laws and actually make a difference. The only idea that I've come up with so far was part of my awareness group was to try to get community members together, especially biracial, indigenous, people of color, everyone, where there isn't so much alienation, where we can come together. The programs were to make activities where children could express themselves with everything that's going on in good ways and bad ways, and to learn about equality and to go forward and to teach. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get enough people involved solidly and committed to make a lot of programs happen. The one program that I have had happen is for meeting with the police departments and the group that is actually doing a police accountability group. They've had some traction, but other than that, I want the same exact thing, and I would love to know how we can do more of that and how we can make that happen.
One more comment. Thanks to all the speakers for being so generous with your authenticity. I'm inspired and moved to tears by your stories of courage and struggle. So much more work to do. More thank yous. And
Can I just chime in on that last question?
yes.
I think it's leading up to the last session in this series when we talk about activism. So maybe we can all bring our ideas and energy to that. And I think that last time and this time we've talked mostly about children. I think that if we don't figure that out, and there are schools right here in Franklin County that know how to do it really well, like the Center School. And so I think we need to insist that many of those practices are brought into all the public schools also, and that how kids treat each other really matters. And then just to offer what I'm doing right now is working with whole movements across the United States that are insisting on climate justice, combining racial justice and climate work, and building wealth in low-income communities and communities of color, and by doing renewable energy project development on tribes and in these communities. And it's really exciting, but there's so much that's going on, so much that's going on many different levels, food systems. And so anyway, I think it's partly just kind of becoming familiar with the opportunities for activism, but really looking at what we can bring home right here.
Thank you, Lynn. And I was going to say the same thing of stay tuned for the next the next Zoom. That really is, we're going that direction to be talking more about racial justice activism. And Kate Stevens is going to talk a little bit about that next program. I think it will help people to think a little bit about the carryover between the last two and the one to come. So
Marguerite,
yes,
could I add something?
please do.
Yes, this happened a while ago, but I thought it was interesting on a reflection of my two older kids. They both questioned me and said, "Mom, why did you bring us up in Greenfield? Why didn't you go down in Amherst or Northampton where there are more people of color? Why did you come to Greenfield where we had to deal with all this racism here in Greenfield?" So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing I just want to reflect on, I guess, kind of bouncing off some of what Sonny was saying, and thinking that my kids were really lucky that they got to spend quite a few chunks of time down with our relatives down in Chester, Pennsylvania, in a Black community, and really felt connected to people there and understood their family's part in what had happened there. And I think that gave them something very special. And I think, their efforts, I laud Sonny's efforts to create groups to, bring the kids together. And I know when my kids got together with the community at Smith, the Black students from the 5 college community, how much it meant to them to be in a welcoming community where people looked like them and understood, what they were going through.
Thanks, Molly. There's a couple more comments, but I do think that probably we're ready to move on to what's coming up, because there is more work to be done, and Kate can talk to us about that.
I want to also say thank you to the panel. This has been fantastic. And I think this seems to be, in terms of enrollment here, the last few times, this is obviously important to a lot of people. So our third of our 3-part series is 2 weeks from tonight, same link, same time, 7 o'clock, lifting the veil on racism in Franklin County through the eyes of 4 anti-racism activists. So 2 of them are African American and 2 of them are white, and they will be talking about their own stories, but then hopefully help lead us into some step, like what's going on and how we might be involved. And then I just wanted to mention 2 weeks after that, interestingly, the Center School, Racial Justice Rising, and the Interfaith Council all together are sponsoring a program called Building a Culture of Reparations. And it's being led by Dr. David Ragland, and he's the co-director and co-founder of the Truth Telling Project and director of Grassroots Reparation Campaign. And so he will speak for 20 minutes or so, and then we'll really have a chance for people to understand what would reparations mean? What are the various, what does that even look like? It's not just about money. It could be money, but it could be all kinds of how we make reparations for the history that we so shamefully have lived. So that will not be the same link. That's a different program, and it will you'll have to register for it. We're doing that because we're getting some of the money from the local cultural councils, and they like to know where people come from. So we will have a registration that's just going to ask for your email and town that you're from, and then you'll get the link. If you're on the email list for the Interfaith Council or Racial Justice Rising or the Center School or Trap Rock, any of those, you will get that flyer and the link. If you're not, then write the Interfaith Council. I'll mention this again next week too, but know that it's not the same series, but we do have a 4th program, Building a Culture of Reparations. Thanks.
I'm sorry. One more thing. There's been some questions about how do we get in touch with people who have been speaking, Sonny locally and Lynn. How do we get those resources or volunteer? You can't write it in the link because I'll get that.
Maybe a thought might be that
I
maybe
just changed it so the chat can go to anyone. I think I did. Everyone publicly. So anyone who is willing to have their name, who wants to share their email, that's fine. If you don't, you certainly don't have to, but also any information.
Thank you, Lynn.
I can, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
yes.
If anybody's on Facebook, we have 295 members, but we need a lot more of commitment and involvement. We need some help in all of our groups, for the activities for the children, police accountability, things along these lines. The group on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, is the Shelburne Falls Community Awareness Group. That is where we've been posting this information, a lot of information like that, a lot of historical information. It's a place where we try to make for local people and people that have lived here, because it's things that are going on in this town. When we had a member of the community with a shotgun over the summer last summer threatening Black people, this was how we communicated with it, because there was no communication from the police. There was no updates from any town, anything. That was also one of the purposes of creating that group, and also to give it outreach to people who can say, I want to help, and what group can I be a part of. Also, I'll put my email in the link if anybody wants to help with any of that local stuff, that it will be here in Shelburne Falls, with surrounding Hilltown areas able to join in, and our hope is to spread to each and every community to have a police accountability group that have been started, but we need to all get joined together in so many of these different things. So my email is myfirstname@gmail.com, but I'll put it in there, and everybody should be able to see my name if anybody wants to get in contact with me.
Thanks.
That's what I got.
Now, I would like, people are starting to leave. We said that we're going to end at 8:30, so I want to honor that time. I guess I would just ask that if there's other things, people could put them in the chat. That could go to you, could go to Kate Mason, and then people could, if need be, they could ask the Interfaith Council. We could respond through the Interfaith Council, I think. So I just want to end as I began with the words from W.E.B. Du Bois from here in Great Barrington. Surely there shall yet dawn some mighty morning to lift the veil and set the prisoned free. Surely there shall yet dawn some mighty morning to lift the veil and set the prisoned free. And may that dawn be upon us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for giving of yourselves and your heart and your spirit. We hope to see you in 2 weeks. Same time, same Zoom.
Thank you for having us.
Molly,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
don't we have a film available right now from All Souls on hate, dealing with hate groups?
No,
No.
No,
Yeah,
we're-
we do. I have, I can, if I have somebody's email, I can send them the notice I have. The Healing from Hate is a film that we have showed our Social Justice Committee, but there's a peace group in Massachusetts that's showing it now. And it's available, I think, through the, what's today? It's available through Sunday. So if I'm at mollychambers41@gmail. So if anybody emails me, I can email them back that information about the film Pam is mentioning.
And it's an
Molly.
excellent film that shows, well, maybe you want to describe it a little bit, Molly. It's an excellent film that shows sort of a hate group people who are retraining their compatriots. That's
Yeah.
really.
I think, they're creating a community where their compatriots who are coming out of, like what happened on January 6th, who decide that they want to change their lives, to create a supportive, loving community where people can go about finding different paths and ways of healing.
But it also shows how people mentally develop hate groups. It's
Thank you, Pam. I really want to honor the time that people gave for tonight. And it's kind of hard when you have offered the time and then things are still going and you want to stay on and you need to go. So I think that we could hold some of this for our next time. But thank you, everyone.
So people slowly drift off, but if anyone has a particular question, a few of us will be here for a few more minutes.
I was going to say something to Molly.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Sonny.
I would love to talk to you. Can you hear me? I would love to talk to you more about the last thing that you said about your children coming to you at a more grown age saying, why did you move me here? Because it is one of the biggest questions of my life that I'm trying to figure out as a good parent right now. If bringing my child here to a place that I thought would give her a better opportunity in the school system and life in that manner, I've also alienated her from, her feeling like she's alone because of her skin color. And, my fight inside right now is, do I stay here? Do I go back to, I don't want to go back to the city life. It's just not something I want, but diversity, kind of thing. And it's my struggle right now.
Yeah.
Can you two connect with each other? Molly, can
Sure.
get together with Sonny? And I think it sounds like a good thing to speak to each other about.
Thank you. maybe I'll send you an email, but thank you, if that's
Sure.
okay. Okay.
Sure, I'm very easy to find. I'm not far from the center of Greenfield.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome. I have to plug my computer in. Actually, I'll plug my computer.
So nice to have you all here. What a great team. And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Sonny, I just wanted to mention one thing. I actually moved my kids to Springfield because I wanted them to have a more diverse community to grow up in when my oldest daughter was going into 7th grade. And we were there for a year and a half, and they said, please take us back to Shelburne Falls. We want to go home.
Thank you.
Because they said we feel safe there. And
Oh, good.
we feel so unsafe here
Hmm.
in Springfield that we can't learn anything, and we really want to be able to learn. So just
that is the one thing that we do have, that was the major thing. So thank you very much. Education, my hope is that will open the doors to everything else.
That's right.
I just remember Molly, and so Molly might remember herself, that a story about her son spending his summers in a summer camp. That was a very important experience. And then they had also a family camp that I used to go to too. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Molly. But I think some of those multi-racial,
Yeah.
but very supportive places were really important.
Yeah, I would mention, Sonny, there's a camp down in this that is based out of the Springfield area. I think it's actually in Brimfield. It's been a while now. It's called Camp Atwater, and it's run by the Urban League of Springfield. And it's historically Black camp, but I mean, it has diversity. And well, I know my younger daughter, who was fair, got teased and called Goldilocks, but at least she was in a totally different situation. And she got to see lots. She went from, having a real dearth of role models of all other counselors there who were from Caribbean countries, African-American kids of color who were counselors, as most of the kids were all kids of color, a lot of them from the Springfield area. And that was a really great experience for her. And the other camp Pam is mentioning, World Fellowship, which is up in the northern part of New Hampshire, is a historically very progressive camp that includes many multiracial families, so that you're not the only one or the only one of two. And there's a lot of content in what the camp does that is really supportive of multiracial families. So those are both resources that link to a number of multiracial families in our area.
Thank you. I wrote all of them down, and that's excellent. Thank you so very much.
So we should all go to bed or something.
Together?
Why not?
Oh, hugs, air hugs.
Have a
Yeah,
big slumber
Sonny,
party.
Mary, thanks so much. Lynn, thanks so much.
Air hugs. Yes.
Molly, that was great. Air hug.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
I
hugs.
have hearts. Thank you.
Soon they'll be back. Well, good night, all. Look at YouTube if you want to see how it came through.
Are you posting that tonight?
No.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Cool. Okay. See how crazy I look tomorrow then.
Okay.
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 Good night.
Night,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Hi, Carlin. Bye, Carolyn.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Hi,
Hi,
Molly.
Molly and Mary.
Hi. Hi.
Jeffrey, good to see you.
Likewise, and Juliet.
See you.
Juliet Seaver's camera's still on. It's fun to say hi, isn't it?
Yes.
Hi. It's good
And-
to see you, Carlin and Tom.
Good to see
Haven't
you
seen
too,
you for a
Molly.
while.
We're used to seeing you on phone. It's great to see you in person.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you for telling your story tonight. A lot for us to hear that. Hello, Sue.
I'm gonna turn us off.
All right.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.